What is the point? You're like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis.
What in the world does Scotty Scheffler mean by that comment? And should you bet on him this week? We'll put that into context and so much more on the Golfbet Roundtable. We're looking at the course, Royal Portrush. Pat Mayo is here to give his best picks, how to make you some massive money this week for the Open Championship at Royal Portrush. Chris Brees, Will Gray, and Pat Mayo, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. We had it at the Masters. Now we're back for the Open. The two that mean the most to me in the course of the year. I feel like you're either a U.S. Open PGA person or a Masters Open person. I personally am a Masters Open person.
That's a good combo. I like that. You've got, definitely the pristine nature of Augusta National, a little more rugged and natural here with Links Golf out in Northern Ireland. It's going to be a fun week. Excited to dissect Royal Portrush. It was fun in 19. I'm expecting big things this week.
Before we get into picks, let's kind of go through this golf course and what we expect to see on the grounds Thursday to Sunday. We know it's a second shot golf course, a lot of dog legs, Pat. When you're looking at players to pick this week, is this the kind of course fit type tournament that you're looking at? Or are you looking at more metrics and stats in general?
I'm trying to find a combination of both, even though I wouldn't describe Portrush as a traditional links course, mainly because there's not going to be the ability to run the ball up on a lot of these holes. When you say second shot golf course, I think it's a second shot. It's a placement off the tee golf course, your second shot, but you also need to be able to get the ball up and down without the general and relative creativity that you usually think about at an Open Championship. Frankly, a lot of these green complexes are going to be a lot like Florida golf in a weird way. Like, if you are someone who struggles chipping it off of tight surfaces, you're not going to have a great week here unless you just hit every green in regulation. And looking at the forecast, I don't think that's going to be what's in the cards for most of the field this week. So that takes a lot of guys off my card. Maybe I'm wrong about it, but that you need to whittle down the field a little bit. So I need control off the tee. Obviously, the longer, the better, but I do think that accuracy is going to mean a ton. Just ask Rory off the first tee in 2019. There's OB here, and the more you venture off the short grass, the worse it's going to get. You can find yourself in a gorse bush, then you're taking a unplayable immediately. So just keep it safe off the tee, dial in your irons, and have that touch around the green from the short surfaces. And all of a sudden we're cooking a little bit. And when you take a look back at 2019, it's basically a who's who of guys that have been awesome at PGA National over the years.
I would not have thought of a Royal Portrush bear trap comp, but that's a fair point. I'm downgrading my Hovland outlook as we speak, as you continue to hit on the fact that you're going to have to chip the ball well on and around these greens. I was actually out there in 2019 at the Open when Lowry won. And the thing, Chris, you mentioned is all the dog legs and the way that this course is set up. And I'm honestly kind of disappointed with the weather outlook. I wanted to get a little frisky, right, for the Open. But the way that Portrush is set up, you've got almost every hole placed to a crosswind. So there's not a lot of into the wind or downwind holes. It's a lot of coming off the right, quartering off the left, things like that. And so that lends for me to that shot shaping and creativity. And can you hit a draw and hold it against a fade wind and have the faith that it's going to stick with your line and stuff like that? It's a beast of a course. It's a sprawling layout. You see there, it goes right up against the water. The fifth hole, you can fall off the cliff if you try and read a putt from too far behind the green there on the back. So it's definitely, visually intimidating. There are some blind shots, some dog legs. But for me, I'm really focusing on who you can trust with those irons and from varying distances, knowing that even if the weather stays as calm as it seems like it's going to versus what we saw in 2019, it's still coming down to ball striking for me.
Pat, you mentioned guys off your card. Can you give me some names? You've eliminated already?
No Victor, no Bryson, no Ludwig.
Okay. You're worried about Hovland's chipping ability with play lies.
I'm worried about not only Ludwig's chipping ability, but his now inability to make putts inside 5 feet for some reason. I don't know where this has come from, but it's not like he's been showcasing the best ball striking skills anyway. And with Bryson, it's not so much that I think he's going to play super poorly, but in order to win this event, although he does have the Bay Hill wins, and maybe that's something to look at when we think about Florida golf. I just don't like him at courses that require him to be as creative as possible. He's not a super creative golfer. He has his same length irons. He's going to try to hit the same sort of shots. And I just think that almost to what Will said, that someone like Lowry, you think of him being a very creative player. Spieth, he can put the ball high, he can put the ball low, he can play it over here, he can hit a draw, he can hit a fade and know when to do that, where Bryson's bread and butter is always going to be the PGA Championship and the US Open, because that requires a certain skill set that Bryson possesses probably better than anyone else on the planet. When we get overseas, I just think that the Open weirdly opens up more of the field than almost any other major. That's why you can see people betting 300 to 1 long shots this week, and you can kind of talk yourself into it in a weird way, where at Augusta you're like, no, that is never going to happen. At the US Open, yeah, Spawn won, but it's not like he was some unknown coming onto tour.
And that happens every once in a while.
What's that?
And that happens every once in a while, the Spawn winner at the US Open.
It does, but it's not like he was a 300 to 1 long shot. I'm not going to say one of these guys is going to win, but you can see these guys mixing more than you would than almost any of the other majors, because it has that creative outlet to it where certain guys are just going to feel comfortable hitting these low flighted shots or having to get the ball up at certain times. And where someone like Bryce, the more mechanical, almost simulator type players that are just dialing in for speed at all times and hitting the same stock shots, I give them less of a chance at an Open Championship than anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Spawn win at Oakmont kind of had some comps to Brian Harman 2 years ago at Hoy Lake, and I think that was one where he just picked a good week to have a really good week in terms of where he was from a stature perspective, and in having won before in the PGA Tour and whatnot. I'm interested in the Hovland idea, because he is someone that on paper would pop for me, having been second in strokes gained approach. Missed the cut last year, but 3 straight top 15s before that at the Open. Shared the 54-hole lead at St. Andrews, which, Pat, I know that one's a little bit different from the rest of the Open Rota courses. I agree with you on the tight lie stuff. I think there's also the component of the Open and on and around these greens sometimes can give you more creativity. Do you feel like it's Hovland as an outlier on what his Achilles heel has been around the greens is too much to hold him back versus what he's done with the irons throughout the year?
He would just have to hit so many greens in regulation and run a hot putter. This isn't to say that Victor can't win. He just needs to run so good. Unlike a lot of the other players in this field, that if you're just like, let's say you only hit 60% of your greens in regulation, you can still win at this course. And it's going to be particularly detrimental, I think, on the par 5s if you're not getting on in 2. We even saw this last week in Scotland at a course which shouldn't have been that hard to chip at. Victor didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden, just he's greenside in 2, and it's par. It's not birdie. He's not chipping in for eagle. Weirdly, the best places that Victor has chipped in his career are all at the places with the longest rough, be it the U.S. Open or Memorial, because it's not that it doesn't require a certain skill set. It's more of a put your club into the ball, hack it out, and roll it somewhere near the hole. See, I mean, Scotty's so good at doing that. But you put Scotty at the Players' Championship, he can also make those shots at the same time, where Victor just seems lost.
Glad you mentioned Scotty. You could say he's not an Open Championship guy just based on his history here. And then you get the comments he made on Tuesday at his press conference. It was about 5 minutes long. It's all over social media. We're going to play snippets of it in about 25 seconds to kind of give some context of what Scotty meant, how you should be picking him this week. Here's what he had to say.
It feels like you work your whole life to celebrate winning a tournament for like a few minutes. You get to number 1 in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? And, I really do believe that, because, what is the point? You're like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not.
So just to put that into context, Scotty Scheffler doesn't say he's quitting golf because of his family and all that stuff. What he's saying is Will, he's a unique person. I mean, there's a reason why this guy has been insane the last 3 years. His mentality is so different from everybody else. But what do you take of what he said on Tuesday about he'll quit golf if he thinks his family life is suffering?
Yeah, I don't know that he's quitting anytime soon. I think those were some insightful comments. It harkens back for me to a former Open champion in David Duval, who famously was 25 years ago now, almost, won the Open, got to world number 1, and kind of looked around at the top of the mountain and was like, well, is this all that there is? Yeah. And it really impacted where he went from there in the rest of his career. It's funny, prepping for this show and prepping for, the content we're doing on Golfbet this week to preview the Open, I'm going through Scotty's, stats and results this year, and I almost feel like we're still underrating what he's doing in 2025. I mean, the guy has not been outside the top 10 since the Players. He's won 3 times, including a major. You look at these prices Pat, it's crazy to see his odds for, a bogey-free round are about the same as his odds to win just the tournament in general. I know this is a little bit different from him being sub 300 at the PGA or even at the Masters, a place where he's won twice. And this does feel like the weakest element for him among the 4 majors. But I'm still not exactly ready to fade Scheffler, especially when you get into those top 5, top 10 finish markets.
I think the top 10 finish for Scotty is really where you want to look at right now, because it's not over 2-1 or minus 200. So if it's over minus 200, it's probably not a play. If it's anything less than that, that's probably where you want to be with Scheffler. I actually think the Portrush is basically the best venue for him in the Open Rota, based on everything that we've just kind of talked about. He's very accurate off the tee. Obviously, he's the best iron player. If he misses the wind, that stuff does not bother him. He can get it up and down. It's the greens that have been giving him problems over here. But like we've seen with Scheffler, you're going to know pretty early on whether it's a week where he's making his putts or he's not. He tends to project that out within the first 9 holes of play. So it'll be interesting to see how he ends up going. I am personally thinking that he's not going to end up winning here. He'll be in the mix. I could see him being like T13 after 3 rounds, then charging up to T4. I mean, Scotty does that so often. Rory gets a lot of criticism for some of those backdoor top 10. Scotty rarely gets that, which I think is pretty interesting. But he should be the favorite. He is the favorite. Does that mean he is going to win? I don't think he is.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think that Scotty deserves to be the favorite, but he is, by and large, especially in the majors, a front runner. And it's you see that they come back on round 3 at the PGA, and that was a little bit different. But for the most part, if he's going to win a tournament at a major, he's usually in the mix after 36 holes or so. I'm much more likely to see what we saw last week at Renaissance, where he's, like you said, Pat, maybe T20, T25 at the halfway mark, puts up a good round 3. All of a sudden, he's leaving Sunday with a T8 and a pretty good paycheck, but never really factored to win the tournament.
All right, let's look at who we do like now and the guys we don't like. Let's talk about how we can make some money. And Pat, I've got a betting card for you here. The guys you like, maybe not even to win, but you could get a ton of these players, awesome numbers in prop markets, top 5s, 10s, even 20s. What I've learned from you from the Masters when we had you on 3 months ago, you love to make people the most money you possibly can in one sitting. And I'm looking at some of these odds, like Ryan Fox looking really good, and Hideki has gone to 90-1 now to win a tournament, which is crazy. I want to start with Hideki. Why do you like him this week?
Well, when you start digging a bit more into what Hideki's been up to, his game is actually in fantastic shape at the moment. It's just he suddenly lost the ability to drive the ball. And before, when Hideki was, even during his Masters win 4 years ago, he was still one of the plus distance players on tour with very plus accuracy. Since just everyone has gotten so much stronger and so much longer, and he really hasn't. So he's just below tour average now in distance, which I don't think is that big of an issue here, because for most of his career, even the past few years, he still remained one of the more accurate players on tour. That accuracy has started to elude him recently, but the approach play is back. He's putting, he's all world around the greens, has a very good Open Championship track record. These slower greens really do play more to his putting skill set and chipping skill set than anything else. We know he can flight it. We know he can put it into the wind. Even the wind that he had at Century, very few courses in America are going to have greens as slow as Portrush. Frankly, when you start looking at which ones do, Kapalua would probably be at the very top of that list if you're going to start comping greens. They're also gigantic greens at the same time. But for him, when you get to courses where you have the ability to club down, so I go into the rabbit hole, I just search by club down courses with not always driver off the tee. All of a sudden, Hideki's strokes gained off the tee go up to top 10 in this field. So now I'm thinking he has this open pedigree. I know that he's won at certain type of comp courses. I would even put Southwind into that mix as well. Another one where it's club down and you need to really be positionally good off the tee, and then your irons take over, your putting takes over. That I just think this really sets up well for him. And it's not that he's going to win. I think when we think about this in terms of odds, you see 90-1 in front of his name. I see 25-1 in front of Tommy Fleetwood, or 30-1 in front of Robert McIntyre. Hideki is better than those guys, especially at winning golf tournaments on the PGA Tour. So I don't know what's going on with this odd. It felt too good to be true. Maybe he'll come dead last. I don't know. I'm not from the future. But 90-1 on Hideki in a major championship sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, it is fascinating to see the dynamic on the odds board where you have guys that people continue to bet that aren't really winning golf tournaments, whether that's Fleetwood, Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa, these guys that on paper really fit the bill, and I'm probably walking myself into stepping on a rake here in like 3 minutes when I pick another one of them. But then you have guys that do have the win equity. I like Hideki that drift a little bit further down. I'm really drawn to Sepp Straka. I think he's clearly in the midst of a career year, and already with 2 wins on his belt, sitting here at 50-1. This is the tournament. Granted, it's a small sample size. He's only played each major about 3 or 4 times a piece, but this is the only one that he has 2 top 25 finishes in, including a runner-up a couple years ago at Hoylake when he was in that big group behind Brian Harman. So Straka, having had a pretty good week last week in Scotland, definitely has my attention heading into this week, because I think he's just on a free roll this whole year.
Pat, I know why Ryan Fox is popular because of his wins on the PGA Tour recently, but I'm assuming you're picking this guy because of his track record in the UK.
In terms of this style of golf, his up and down game is excellent at both links and non-link style courses in the UK. And he just knows these greens so well, is fantastic in the wind. And when you take a look at Ryan Fox's career, you want to get him when he starts to get on a heater. You can almost divvy up his career in segments where 75% of the time he's kind of bad. And then he goes on these just insane runs for about 3 months. He's still in the midst of that. He has 2 wins. He won my National Open, the Canadian Open, a few weeks back, and he does have a win at another National Open, it being the Irish Open, about 3 years ago as well, at a course that is, again, not necessarily link style, relies heavily on the driver. You worry that if his driver gets a bit wayward, he could get himself out of it. But for me, Straka and Hideki are just outright bets to win. With Ryan Fox and the others on my list, they're going to be guys that I play both with the top 10 and top 20 along with it at very big odds.
All right, I am going to get into my best bet because, Will, you're going to think this is controversial. You guys, Windham Clark is getting closer to playing good golf than I think that many people are giving him credit for. The fact that I've got a top 20, simple 20, 4-1 odds for a guy who was a winner as early as last year on tour. He's won a major. He's won plenty of signature events. We're starting to think that Windham Clark's having a terrible 2025 year, Pat, but this is the first time all year he's shown consistency week to week. In the last 3 weeks, he has 2 top 20s, his last 3 events. He has not done that at all the entire 2025 season. In fact, not even close. So I'm seeing a guy who was in that final group last week. I don't look at his Sunday dismay as he forgot how to play golf. I see it as anger from him wanting to do better this week, knowing he can be at the top like he was last week. He's more consistent now. He's hungry, and all I need is a top 20.
I worry that he can't drive the ball straight, that he's going to be just like at Renaissance Club. You can drive the ball basically wherever you want, as long as you're not in one of those fairway bunkers, which no one can get out of. 90% of the time, you're going to be fine in the fescue or the rough and be able to play it out. That's not going to be the case. That would be my worry about Windham Clark, is that he just lets out that big fade. That big fade gets caught by the wind, and he gone.
The LA Country Club 72nd hole fade. That might not play well at Portrush at times. Listen, I think it's amazing. It kind of speaks to where we are with Windham Clark right now. We're 2 top 20s and a missed cut in Detroit speaks to consistency. Like, that's the best. That's the bright spot of his season right now. If the regular season ended today, Windham Clark is not qualifying for the playoffs. Correct. He's 78th in the FedEx Cup. I get where his pedigree has been over the last couple of years, but I think 2025 has definitely been a step down. Chris, you mentioned anger. I want no part of Windham Clark being angry on a golf course right now, especially if I'm trying to keep him on the leaderboard. But it is a little bit of a head turner to see this price for him for a top 20 mark. It
was a head turner when Justin Rose should have won the Masters, depending how you want to cut it. Will, you believe in the guy again this week?
I'm going back to the well. Yeah, we had him last week for the roundtable for Scotland, and he spiked to top 10. Granted, this was like he opened 3 different back doors to get to the top 10 last week, putting together a great round on Sunday. I just think this is an intriguing guy because he's feast or famine. Like, if he makes, whether it's at a major championship, the Masters, he was a runner-up here last year at Royal Troon, but throughout his 2025 season, it's basically, if he makes the cut, he's more often than not going to be in the top 10. He's not going to make the cut every time. It's similar to what Pat was saying about the Hideki pick. He could definitely just eject with a 75 on Thursday, and we're done and dusted. But if he's in the mix, I really think that he's still one of those guys, along with Adam Scott, that we saw, spiking at the U.S. Open at Oakmont, the guys that are getting into the twilight of their career, knowing how big of a difference it'll be between having one major and getting that second major. Justin Rose doesn't need anyone to explain that to him, as he probably has 1.75 majors at this point. But plus 650 on a top 10, I was looking at, the top 20 prices, and I think it's worth, leveling it up and setting the mark at a top 10, because if he's going to have a good week, I really think he could land inside that top 10 versus trying to take a little bit of a safer route and have the price for a top 20.
Of all the guys with one major, do you think Rose gets the asterisk by it, because not only just because of his close calls, but because he has that gold medal?
Potentially. I think it's like him and Adam Scott. It's so funny how close their careers parallel. I think they're separated by about 2 weeks in age, and just the number of close calls both of them have, whether it's Adam Scott at Lytham or the playoffs for Rose, at the Masters. I think this year with the duel with Rory probably puts him over the top. And it's the big what if for me. Now we're going down a rabbit hole. Is like, what if Justin Thomas doesn't pull a rabbit out of his hat at Southern Hills, and he's sitting there with one major and a Players and in a different part of his career? But I think of the two of them, I would probably give the edge to Justin Rose over Adam Scott, but I think it's close.
You hit on a big name here, Justin Thomas. I mentioned the PGA National comp, and my picks kind of reflect that. Just playing in the wind, Kapalua, another one. Obviously, I had Chris Kirk on that list, a winner both at PGA National and Kapalua. And what do they say? That when it's blowing, you need to swing easy. Chris Kirk looks like he hits practice swings when he hits now. It's such a smooth motion that I do think that the older guys do have a better chance here. The chip, the putt, the iron players who might not have all that distance. But then you have Justin Thomas, who, Kapalua winner, PGA National winner, Players Championship winner off these tight surfaces. He's going to be able to control the ball. His best finish at an Open was here in 2019. He was T11. Can he hit the ball straight enough to compete? Because if he could just hit the fairway, feel like it's game on for him.
Hey, Pat, I'll let Will give you the spiel he gave me last week when I picked Justin Thomas to win last week. Go ahead, Will.
No, I think it's less about hitting the driver's shot. I think that Justin Thomas has a tough time avoiding the big number, and I think that links golf sometimes can get in his head. That's just my perception on it. And I think that it's hard for me to look at him as someone to try and play 4 rounds. Now, granted, if we're going to have a calm weather forecast, and if it's not going to get, nasty like it did last year in the 3rd round of Royal Troon, maybe I like him a little bit better. But I just feel like the eject button is always a little closer for Justin Thomas at the Open than it is at the other 3 major championships. And I wonder how much just the vagaries of links golf and the rub of the green can kind of affect him versus how he would show on paper.
It's worth noting, too, the tee times obviously have been released. And I've been trying to monitor the forecast. So I had it from when I initially put out my column on Sunday and been trying to update it every half day or so to see how much it's changed. At the moment, as we're speaking, the guys who go out in the morning on Thursday would appear to not only get it better on Thursday, but get it way better on Friday afternoon, both in terms of rain and wind, because rain is a-coming all of a sudden. And I don't think that we expected that about 2 days ago.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's going to be a new wrinkle. And I think coming off of last week at Renaissance, where it was just basically Bluebird, Chamber of Commerce sort of weather. I listen, as a fan and not someone that has to walk inside the ropes and try and get the ball in the hole. I want some rain. I want some wind. I want this. That's such a distinguishing factor for this tournament that I want at least one of those rounds where these guys need to break out the all-weather tires.
Let's get into some winners now. The comment about older players doing well at the Open strikes me, Pat, because in a young man's game, your winner is seen as an old guy nowadays.
Yeah, I've considered myself an old guy now, so Russell Henley and I are very much on the same page. He got the breakthrough win at Bay Hill. That was very encouraging to see earlier this year. It took the chip in order to pass, but again, that's a driver-heavy course that requires accuracy and long irons with a lot of wind where you need to flight the ball, especially for Russell Henley, who is not that long off the tee. Additionally, with PGA National, he has one of the best track records. He won there in 2014, but it's his accuracy at that course as well, and his short game and his ability to roll the rock there that continues to have him with 3 top 10s in the past 4 years. So he kind of checks those sort of benchmarks that I like to see. And then when you get him at club down courses, even something like TPC River Highlands for the Travelers Championship less than a month ago. He almost squeaks his way into a playoff with Keegan coming down the stretch there. That I think that these are the types of courses that you want to take him at. It was a lot like Billy Horschel a year ago, who found himself in second place. Russell Henley did play this as a part of the Walker Cup back in 2010. Won 3 of his 4 matches, by the way, that year. And he did come inside the top 10 at the Open a year ago. We needed to see him put some sort of result on paper. Very few guys outside of Colin Morikawa come out of nowhere with no positive results at an Open Championship and just win the Open Championship. Now that we've seen Henley put that down last year, I think now could very much be his time. And he's weirdly being slept on a little bit for...
Absolutely, he is.
Like I like Seb Straka a lot, but let's be real here. Seb Straka has a case of the Victor Hovlands around the greens as well. He just happens to be 3 times the price, so I'm willing to accept that. The only deficiency Russell Henley really has is distance, and I don't think it's going to make that big of a factor here.
I think the one caveat for me as we talk through, the veteran mindset of the Open Championship winners, and this is definitely the tournament where the winners average a little bit older than the other 3, is I'm blanking on the exact stats. I think go back to 2012 or 2013, every winner of the Open has finished first or second at a previous major. And so I'm thinking back to where has Russell Henley been in the mix? Has he been, had that opportunity to really, come down the back 9 of a major with a chance to win? I know he's in the mix at Torrey Pines, but that's one you think back to, Morikawa came out of nowhere, not out of nowhere, but winning as a debutant in 21, but he had won the PGA the previous year. And Brian Harman had spiked a runner-up at Erin Hills at the US Open and things like that. So as we handicap the field and kind of look through some of the contenders, I think that's just an interesting prism to look through things of. You really do need to have either won a major before or been in the mix, as according to the last 10 or 12 years of Open Championship winners, to have a chance to get your hands on the jug.
So what you're saying is better news for Seb Straka.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, listen, the T2 counts.
Who's on your card? And Will, your winner also checks your boxes because he's won a major before. What is it about Matt Fitzpatrick? Is it anything other than the fact that he's playing really good golf right now?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, I think that, watching him last week in Scotland, and I'm digging in a little bit more, and I just think we're not talking enough about him and the fact that he's figured it out. I mean, I think we went for a long time. Last year was a bit of a disappointment, I think, by his standards coming in. We're 3 years removed from Brookline at this point, and he was trying to add speed and change some aspects of his game, and he started to drift down the world rankings. It's like, where did this guy go? And all of a sudden, he finished T8 at Quail Hollow at the PGA Championship in May, and he seems to have figured it out. Now he's starting to put together some results, back-to-back top 10 finishes the last couple of weeks. And I just think that, whether you look at his long iron stats, when you look at what he's able to do with his wedges inside 100 yards, having been in the mix at major championships and won before, 50-1, this is again in that Seb Straka zone where things could go wrong, but I'd much rather take a chance coming into this week at a couple of guys in that 40, 50, up to 80-1 range than try and really figure out which of the guys, from under 25 or 30-1 is going to spike.
And the books have taken their odds down on him, but really not that much. I mean, for as well as he's done the last month and played well in a major recently, I would assume this number would have been 40-1, not 50-1. You haven't talked about Fitzpatrick at all, Pat. What do you think about him?
I'm indifferent to Fitzpatrick. I think that he's very much on the same tier as the other UK players that are half his price. So in terms of pure value in a bet, I like him better than I like Tommy Fleetwood to win this, and Tommy Fleetwood is half his odds, so it would only make sense to take Matthew Fitzpatrick. I would still look a little bit further down the board because I do think, it all comes back to this Hideki argument that I made. Is Matt Fitzpatrick a better player than Hideki? I would say no.
I will say, this goes back to what we were saying before. As much as Matt Fitzpatrick playing good golf drew me to him, the one asterisk of many there might be is that Matt Fitzpatrick does not win a lot of golf tournaments, which is a big piece of the outright puzzle. So admittedly, that's something to factor in as we talk about those guys like Cantlay, Morikawa. Fleetwood certainly is the marquee guy of you're in the mix, you have all the stats, but you're not necessarily getting your hands on the trophy. Matt Fitzpatrick broke through in a big way at Brookline, but it hasn't really followed it up with 3 or 4 wins like you might have expected.
Pat, I know it's a busy week for you. Thanks for coming on. Tell the people what you got going on the rest of this week and how they can watch you.
I will be live each and every night, and probably after the rounds, I'll be doing a cut sweat as well on Friday afternoon with the guys coming down the stretch. We'll see if we can sneak our guys through to the weekend. I'll be doing a live chat all over on Mayo Media Network on YouTube, or you can subscribe to listen after the fact on my audio feeds on Apple and Spotify under the Pat Mayo Experience. I also have the Mayo Media newsletter. That's completely free. I also double post it up on X at the PME. So if you want the pics, you want the info, and you want it in real time, that's where you're going to get it.
Good luck. Have fun. Go check them out.
Thanks, Pat.